Welcome all to another free Friday evening here on the Beach Brothers Show. We have a special guest tonight, both from the Great Peninsula of Virginia. Running for the State House in District 91 will be Charles West, and a great Hampton activist, Nikia Miller, will also be on the show. These are former guests, and I love having them on. So tonight should be a great one. So let us get right to the show.
So look, the Beach Brothers Show is a show where we deal with Virginia business and politics.
Well, I'm Conrad Chesviner. I'm a Hampton West political activist. Best ideas for community improvement happen to drive me.
I help folks that are approaching retirement and in their retirement years.
I have what I call the empowerment agenda. And that means that everything I do is focused on empowerment. You want to give a salute to Tally and Twine. It's time for you to have a high quality watch made in Virginia, made in Portsmouth, Virginia, from Tally and Twine. We want to say thanks to Southern Volkswagen Greenbrier for their great level of sponsorship. If you need a new car, you don't need to go far. Southern Volkswagen Greenbrier. And ladies, if you want your brows to say, wow, check out IamLitaWee.com. Microblading by IamLitaWee.com. I'm Seiko Varner. I do credit fixes, tax resolutions. I lend private money to real estate investors, and we do debt consolidations. If you need any of these services, contact me as provided. And now it's time to get beachy on the Beach Brothers Show.
Time for my podium. And there is a mood going around politics these days, an angered mood, if you will, a mood not dissimilar to the metaphorical animal trapped in a corner. And its presence in today's discourse is partially startling and partially dangerous. We all saw this mood in Loudoun, Virginia school board meeting some weeks back, where parents yelled at board members about transgender policy and non-existent critical race theory curriculum. There have been arrests, loud chanting over people, disorder there that night. We saw this mood manifest in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, where a characteristically similar crowd assaulted Capitol Police, invaded the United States Congress, destroyed property, and made demands to overturn results of a widely popular and fair election their chosen candidate had lost. There's a local person who attended D.C. that day. Her social media profile picture is of proudly displaying flags, while behind her, her political brethren were on top of and inside the U.S. Capitol building. This local woman is a rallier of this mood, and she carries it to Virginia Beach school board meetings, including one this past Tuesday. They required multiple recesses, and school board members even being escorted to their cars by security. Members of this local mood have even now been interviewed by national media outlets like Fox News and CNN. And this is a problem because that mood adds another log to the fire each time an interview like that happens. And that fire is unsettlingly hot. That heat shone prior to that school board meeting when another local woman noticed social media posts from this moody crowd were getting violent. And this isn't hyperbole. One comment said, blow up the joint. One comment said, drag them off the board, beat the hell out of them. What are you afraid of? Take control or shut up. One comment said, you can wear guns on your waist into those meetings. You don't even need ammo. They'll listen, stand up for yourself, and exercise your rights. Another said, we are protesting each of their houses next week. Here we come. One said, this is what I don't understand. When shooters go on shooting sprees, why do they shoot random people? They could easily pick school board members. One said, your time will come for what you educators are doing, and it won't be pretty. One said, with a lot of emoticon faces, it's good to know the hill you will die on. We will make sure of that. These individuals are out there. They are within that cancerous mood, It isn't enough to simply point them out. I call on reaction. See, they're planning another one of their little rallies in Virginia Beach to protest critical race theory, and it will be in front of the Sandler Center at 6 p.m. on July 29th. I want their voice countered, and I no longer wish my fellow patriots the Democratic persuasion set out on the sidelines while these go on. Local Democrat groups, local progressive groups, libertarian groups, groups specifically to advance marginalized communities like the Hampton Black Caucus and Black Lives Matter. I want you out there to let those moody few know that you're out there too. And that's my podium. Before I carry it over to the guests tonight, I want to remind you on hot July days like today, you need air conditioning that runs cold right throughout your car. And you need the right car to do that. You should stop by 1248 South Military Highway in Chesapeake. That's Southern Volkswagen. Go in, speak with Charlie Roy, and get one of those high-value, quick, and cold cars to get you through this July heat. So, tonight's Free Friday consists of two special previous guests of the Beach Brothers Show, two prominent Peninsula activists. First, Nikia Miller. Let's bring her on today. Hope you're doing well.
Hello.
Howdy, howdy. And Charles West, let's bring you right on, good sir.
Hey, good evening, good evening.
Guys, let's have fun on this Friday. First, how are each of you doing?
I think the summer allergy season is tapped in and written all across my face. So excuse me if I'm a little bit red today.
I will admit, it's not really limited to the summer for me. I've been known to have a little bit of stuffy nose or allergies and stuff pretty much year round. So I feel your pain on that one. Mr. Charles, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm glad it's Friday. There's exactly what Miss Miller said. It's a lot of pollen in the air and an angry sun. And it's an honor to meet you, Miss Nikia, and it's a double honor to be invited back on here to the Beach Brothers Show. And it's good to see you guys. And I'm excited.
Excellent. Excellent. This is, of course, the second of what I like to call Free Friday. And I wanted to be a little looser than the regimented ways that we have been doing the Beach Brothers Show in the past. Let's just sit and talk about some good issues here in the area that's on our minds. And so let's start with y'all's projects. Ms. Nikia, how is rallying the school board and fighting for justice against some politicians and justice that might not have been on your side? How have you been doing politically the past couple of weeks?
Everything, right now, the Hampton School Board, because of course it's the summer, as far as their public meetings, they are in hiatus until the school year starts in September. But that doesn't mean that the fight is over. Of course, that's going to continue, and the tallies are going to continue to run, until they do right by my daughter. We did have some really exceptional news yesterday. We received word that Celeste was accepted into Norfolk Collegiate School. So she will not be in Hampton City Schools next year. Thank you, Jesus. But, as one of my children exits HCS, the other one enters, because my son will be in kindergarten. So, they're not going to get rid of me, because even though my fourth grader will be at Norfolk Collegiate, my sophomore and my kindergartner will be in Hampton City Schools. So at this point, it is, of course, gearing up for the legal battle that is ahead, doing everything that we can to support Celeste as she moves into a new plateau and a new environment, and holding Hampton City Schools and the school board to task, and just making sure that they don't forget the fact that their non-action in regards to protecting Celeste, it doesn't go away with silence. It's going to continue to be there until something's done.
Good work, good work. Mr. Charles, I happened to see you last night at a nice event. What's it been like the past few days and weeks with your campaign?
It's been an extremely busy and interesting time. But first, before I even get to that, Miss Miller, like I said, it's nice to meet you. Now I find out that you're an advocate to the Hampton School Board. I'd love to get together with you and talk some about that after the show or whenever we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was at this event last night where I saw Conrad with the Hampton Roads Black Caucus at their Caucus Connection tour. They're going around all the 7 cities, giving the community an opportunity to connect with candidates. And one of whom that was there was a local school board member. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a doctor, Dr. Jason something. But anyways, it'd be great to figure out how we can advance to make education better in the coming years. Then moving on to what we've been doing since the last time I was here in June, we have begun going around to the city council meetings and getting a close pulse on what's going on in the cities. We're also going around to different interest groups. Not interest groups, but civic groups. Civic leagues. The Pocosa Women's Club is coming up, and the Bucker Improvement League is coming up. And the HRBC was last night, because I'm looking to go around and get in touch with different community activist groups and find out what exactly are the issues people are concerned about with their government, especially those who feel like they're not getting their point across. And we had a spectacular fundraiser barbecue. It went terrific. Everything we could have expected and more. And we're hoping that that momentum continues carrying us on through the summer. We're looking to organize more events, including like car shows and figuring out ways we can work with the different community groups that we're meeting with to do things cooperatively. And as always, we're looking for people. If you're interested in helping with volunteering or helping out financially, if you don't have the time, then people can visit west2021.org and let us know if you have questions or comments. I'm not a big money guy. If you send us a message, you'll get in contact with me personally, and I'll react to every single person that reaches out, so we can make sure that the voters feel like their concerns are heard, not like they're just yelling out into a building.
All right,
Absolutely.
good to see that there's some momentum going.
That's like, it's crazy. I have said this more than once, where a lot of people talk about how Hampton, they talk about how areas are 6 degrees of separation. Hampton Roads is 2. And it's like either you know someone or you know someone who knows them. Last night, I really wanted to be at the HRBC event, but I was actually, I had a previous engagement. I was invited to Delegate Price's birthday celebration. So that's where I was last night. But Charles, what's really great about this is where in Hampton do I live? In the 91st. So
Hey.
yeah.
That's good. Perhaps we could have more, if not just tonight, but other times in the future. Time to just sit and chat about the 91st.
Well, we definitely sit on the same level in terms of being in the community and understanding things from the perspective of having kids in the school board system. We've got one fixing to start kindergarten now and another going into 5th grade. And so when I met this doctor last night, I told him, congratulations on their work recently with getting all the schools accredited, because I remember not too long ago they weren't. But there's
absolutely
a lot of work to be done. And we intend to help in every way we can.
And he was with Hampton School Board?
Yes.
Okay, then it was Jason Samuels.
Yes,
Yep.
Samuels was, I think, was he wearing the orange shirt and the dark suit?
It was in red. Yeah.
He was taller than I think everyone else there.
Yeah,
If
if
I
his name
recall.
was Jason, it was Jason Samuels. And he's actually up next term.
Hmm.
So,
Well, remember, this was at a caucus event for the Hampton Roads Black Caucus. And of course, I would like to shout out that organization again, by the way, as a member of the stream team for the HRBC and a member of the community action team for the HRBC. I want everyone, viewers or not, to look up the organization and give it a chance for a join, perhaps in the future. And last night was the community caucus social at JT's Bar and Grill in Newport News. Now, Charles, you and I were there, of course. What so far would be your opinion on the organization and maybe specifically the event last night?
Well, when I got there and I was introducing myself to people because I wasn't invited. I've seen the event on Facebook, expressed my interest, and then just went. I mean, I marked myself as going. I wasn't trying to crash the party. But when I showed up, people kind of wanted to know, who are you and what are you doing here? You've got a tie on and a bunch of buttons. And so I was explaining to people, that I had lived here all my life and I hadn't heard about it. They were coming to Hampton, so I came to Newport News. And when I had explained that I'm currently running for office in the area, they expressed to me how they're a nonpartisan organization, told me about how their main interests fall with education and economic empowerment in our community. And as a member of our community, having lived here, like I said, all my life, which ain't been a real long time, but long enough that I've seen the problems. They sound like they're an issues focused group, and they're inclusive to all types of people. I got a great reception there. Even though I didn't know anybody, and it was a great time. And I encourage people to look up the Hampton Roads Black Caucus and find out about their issues. And when you do, you'll find out that they're concerned about our community. And if you live here, you're part of that community. So why not?
Cool. Now, last week, the Beast Brothers show had did a stream team workup with the HRBC for a discussion on reducing gun violence. And we had a rather excellent discussion, in my opinion. So let's have another, but maybe not as long as that one was, of course, but on the topic of reducing gun violence. And first, right off the bat, I want to admit my rather radical stance. This is my stance. This isn't any organization's. I do not like guns or the idea of any person or group of people or even law enforcement or even government functions like the military having them. But that is just me. I'm radical like that. This is distinct from other progressives. This is different from Republicans and Libertarians and Democrats. So, in looking at Eastern Virginia's recent instances of gun violence, the two of you, what's your generalized stance on guns in the community versus rights, and how we can brainstorm ideas to reduce gun violence? Let's start with Ms. Nikia.
okay. Like most girls in Hampton Roads, I threw a rock and hit a sailor. And we've been married for almost 16 years. We are gun owners. Guns are not my thing. My husband is a marksman and has a concealed carry. So, do I support 2A? Yes. But what I think happens is that people use the mantra of the right to bear arms in a different way than what was intended by the founding fathers. When the right to bear arms was included in the Bill of Rights, that was included in order for people to form militias. And now people, are using it to think that they can, have a closet full of ARs. And that bothers me. I think that comprehensive gun reform is absolutely needed because, there needs to be some kind of a check and balance to get you know, people who do not need to have weapons, they shouldn't. And if we can't have, you know, real background checks and, you know, have individuals trained in what they, you know, in how to handle weapons, and also limit the amount of guns that individuals can have at one time, because you know you don't need to have an arsenal in your home. That's ridiculous. And you know, we've got young, you know, young men and women of color dying from BB guns and, you know, fake pistols. But, you know, I'm supposed to feel comfortable with someone who has a rifle on their arm walking around Walmart. That's ridiculous. Um, you know, something's got to be done. And, you know, I think that there is a middle ground between those individuals who are ultra progressive like Conrad and individuals who are Charles and Heston. You know, we can come to a, you know, a happy medium that, you know, protects people's freedoms as well as protects the general public.
Now, Mr. Charles, you're notably running as a libertarian, and they are very overt and clear and concise on their opinion on gun rights. So, talk to us about how you view this.
Well, when it comes to the being a libertarian and running on that platform thing, I try to make sure that everybody I communicate with, especially when they go, "Oh, you're a libertarian, so that means you're an anarchist, right?" I try to explain to them that, like any political group, we have people that are way far on one side and people who are kind of in the middle and more meshed with other groups. So while, yes, I do recognize and respect and kind of cheer for those folks who fully believe you should be able to, you know, walk a cannon down the street if you so well please. That's well for them, but that's not what public policy should mean. There is a way to protect people's safety and discourage recklessness without impinging on people's freedom. When it comes to things like militias, that's recognized in the Second Amendment, but I don't believe that that was the sole provision of the Second Amendment. I do believe that it guarantees people the right to own firearms personally. And also, I don't see anything wrong with people, especially those who have been educated in how to use weapons safely, carrying them to defend themselves. Now, this is speaking as not only a libertarian, but I am a gun owner. I don't have 48 guns, but I do have a firearm and I carry it regularly. But also, I took a safety class when I was as young as I could, and I also worked with a firearm for years as an armed guard. So the only reason I don't currently have a concealed handgun permit is because I never went to the court to apply for one. You know, now I've got a little bit older and wiser and see how one would be useful. I do intend to in the near future. Yeah. But background checks are essential. You know, they're the mechanism that we do have to keep weapons out of the hands of criminals and psychos. Because I certainly don't think, you know, schizophrenics or killers, you know, should be out purchasing firearms, especially not carrying them in public. And when it comes to people who walk around with ARs strapped to their back in Walmart and urban locations, you know, people like that, they take the entire movement about seriously protecting people's rights to defend themselves, and they make a mockery of it. Those people are the ones you want to model after when you want to look at responsible gun owners. Further, I don't think there should be anything precluding people from owning as many weapons as they want, because of the fact that if people store them safely and out of the hands of children, that's the number one thing when it comes to firearms in one's home. Keep them out of the hands of the kids. That's the number one cause of a household accident in a gun owner's home, usually. is the fastest way somebody gets hurt is somebody leaves a gun laying around unsecured and a child gets hold of it. So if we can guarantee that people store them safely, why not hobbyists be able to indulge their hobbies? Because I recognize there's a variety of different types of firearms, and people like to collect those like people like to collect coins. It's an expensive hobby, like golf, but it's definitely one to be recognized. All that to say this, I personally believe that people should be able to carry firearms in public, especially if they can be recognized as responsible gun owners.
Noted. Now, I want to bring up the shot.
To get to the point, all that's about the Second Amendment. That has nothing to do with wasn't the root issue, gun violence.
Yeah. Just, we sort of spoke a little bit about our opinion on the Second Amendment itself. We gave that. I guess let's carry it to how do we thread the needle between gun rights and then active ways we can reduce gun violence? What are our thoughts on that? Who wants to go first?
Lady first.
When it comes towards reducing gun violence, I think that there are many things that can be done. But a lot of those things, because when you try to predict why people carry, especially why people carry illegally, that can be a very multifaceted thing. Doesn't make it right at all, but it's reality. I think that ways to reduce gun violence are, number one, education. I think that people being properly trained on how to handle firearms, I think that that's huge. And I think that, in my opinion, I think it should be a requirement before you're able to purchase a firearm. I think that you should have to take formal training in order to make sure that, you have some education about this lethal weapon that you're about to have in your hands. I also think that there has to be some social things that are corrected within our society in order to reduce violence as a whole, especially gun violence. I think that, we need to have conversations about, things that we can do within social policy in order to make families whole and to reduce the poverty gap and to not, for people to not feel like they're trapped into, a criminal element in order to succeed or to survive. I think that within those confines, a lot of the issues that, bring gun violence to the forefront can be corrected. And that's something that, can absolutely make positive change in that area. I also think that we have to start getting into a mindset where we're not afraid of each other. And that, to me, is probably the biggest part of this, because, every time that you talk about something, especially when it comes towards weapons, it's people who are afraid of law enforcement. It's people who are afraid of other people. It's people who are afraid of different, social groups, people who are afraid of different racial groups. And a lot of it, I think, is just a true misunderstanding of who those people are, what they represent. And, at the end of the day, we all are, we all have families. We all have people that we love and care about. And, we want to be able to go out, do whatever it is that we do, and get home at night. And I think that that unsettled fear from people, just creates the chaos that, brings people to own weapons when they should. Um, and they're not qualified to have them. So that's just kind of my thoughts.
All right. Mr. Charles, let's say you were at a forum for the 91st District and they had brought up, how do we reduce gun violence in Hampton Roads? How would you want to answer a question like that?
Well, I'm a big believer that government, where it exists, is more effective through incentivization and education than through coercion and threat. Tightening laws and making criminals out of more people is not the right response to gun violence. The correct response to gun violence is to foster discussions and help to make education a priority when it comes to safe handling of firearms. But that's not just where it ends. Miss Nikia was exactly on point that all these issues run on top of each other, because it's very important to recognize the difference between lawful gun owners in the Second Amendment fight and people that engage in gun violence. Because gun crime, it comes from a place of desperation, usually either a place of desperation or a place of anger. And see, there's nothing you can do about people that know each other deciding they want to hurt each other. If you take away the guns, they'll use a rock. So that doesn't solve that. But when we make economic conditions better by loosening restrictions and making it easier for people to follow their enterprise and to make their way, and make it easier for people to achieve what they want to achieve without having to jump through burning hoops to do everything that they need to achieve what they want to achieve, then people will be living better. And we can also start even younger than that, because there's so many young kids that are engaged in this kind of stuff, even more so than when I was in school. When I was in school, yeah, there were certain kids that were up to no good, but now it seems like every other week, some young kid, 17, 18, 19, is getting hurt or getting in some type of trouble over something like this. And see, if we go to the schools and we get them to offer sports, get them to offer extracurriculars, get them to offer places for kids to go to and get involved with things that are productive, that hand in hand with this education we were talking about a couple minutes ago will go a long, long way to counter people turning to a gun where they feel like there is something already.
I next want to bring this to the idea of how we approach the idea of the government responding to it themselves, not so much how they make us respond to gun violence, but how they respond to gun violence. And last week when we were doing the discussion, Mr. Charles, you happened to make a comment that the shot spotter technology was also implemented in Newport News during one of the moments last week. Now, to remind the audience, Virginia Beach had some leftover CARES Act funding, so they took $1.87 million of it and spent it on ShotSpotter to build a system to locate the precise location of oceanfront gunshots and even the type of gun that was used. So let's talk about that system in relation to perhaps even privacy rights or proper government spending and gun violence. And let's start with Mr. Charles, because you have a little bit of knowledge, I guess, on ShotSpotter already.
My knowledge on ShotSpotter ends at knowing what it is, and that can tell you what type of firearm is being used, down to things like caliber. I do know that it's extremely effective overseas in combat zones and is proven effective in Newport News, and I hope that it does the same in Virginia Beach in terms of helping to successfully prosecute when violence is committed against people. Because I like to believe in small government, but that's government's one job. If government has a one job, that's what their one job is to protect people's liberties. And whether it's a foreign army marching on our soils or somebody down the street depriving you of your life, government is there to protect your liberty. So when it comes to prosecuting gun violence, that needs to be done fiercely, because when people deprive people of their things and their health and their lives, that needs to be accounted for. When it comes to privacy issues with ShotSpotter, it's hard to convince me of that as an argument not to have it installed. My biggest moan and groan about Virginia Beach's specific way they've rolled out their ShotSpotter system is that they use federal funding. I feel like every time that a whole bunch of federal government money gets sent in, supposedly to do something helpful for people, they get hold of one of these companies and give them a blank check to install this system at whatever cost necessary because it's taxpayer funded. If we throttled that back a little bit and put these companies in a position where they had to compete for the city's business, the taxpayers could have saved money. And I stand by that account. But that's no reason not to have this system. It is a good system to have. I hope that it proves useful.
Mr. Keel, what would be your opinion of something like ShotSpotter overall?
I'm fine with it. I'm actually in agreement with everything that Charles said. It's like, if there is surplus funding for something, you shouldn't be able to give it to the company or individuals that bought you the best dinner and and gave you the best perks and stuff like that, which is what happens a lot when contracts are awarded without bid. Government is not a it's not a blank check. And when there's surplus funding, then you should really aim towards doing as much as you can for the population that you serve by using whatever funds that is in an effective and efficient way. Case in point, I'm a freelance graphic designer by trade. So when Hampton City Schools put out that they were spending $150,000 in order to rename 5 schools, I was like, why? Because it doesn't cost $30,000 a building in order to rebrand, change signage, change stationery. To me, that's ridiculous. And if you were to take that to I'm not familiar with what it is that they did, but I can tell you, because it's my arena, that makes absolutely no sense. So, if things like that are happening in education, then when it comes towards law enforcement and public safety, that should be even smaller than that.
I'm curious, could there be a possible philosophical discussion as to whether or not, while we might not necessarily be against ShotSpotter as a concept, we could be against whether or not that $1.87 million was needed at that moment for ShotSpotter, or perhaps just other investments in the community that might actually have a more direct play in reducing gun violence. Perhaps given out to some local organizations, specifically in the form of grants, to help the community, if there's any ways about that. So if let's say you guys were both in power making positions, would you advocate for ShotSpotter, or would you advocate for, say, a little bit more direct government spending inside the communities? And let's go back from Nikia toward Charles.
I would, especially if I was in a position of influence or a position of authority, I would present ShotSpotter, as a way, number one, to identify and decrease crime to the neighborhoods that have the biggest issue with gun violence, and as a way to decrease that and make things better. But I would also make sure that it was articulated that the need at this point would be to not invade their privacy, but to do something, substantive to decrease crime. And, it might take more than one conversation to get to a consensus and to, make it so that people understand. But, being willing to have those conversations and, displaying the technology and saying, okay, this is what this is how it operates. If you have to sit there and, go over and over and over and over until, that, the community feels comfortable. And, of course it would be something that, would need to, I prefer that it would be an initiative on a ballot. But, that's, I think that a lot of times when, especially when new technologies that, can be perceived as invasive are, put out there and advertised, it's that people want, especially government, they just want to do it and they don't want to hear what people have to say, and they don't want to put forth the effort in order to really explain what it is and get the buy-in from the community. So that's just how I look at it.
Mr. West, if you were given the prospect of something like a ShotSpotter in the 91st district, and you also had the opportunity cost, the economic principle of opportunity cost, of direct community subsidy for something of, say, recreation, little leagues, or other thing to be given to groups to help people out, would you more support tax dollars being spent on ShotSpotter technology or the group itself?
First, I want to play devil's advocate and make sure that we do recognize there is a privacy component to this. And I don't want that to get left in the dust, because it is conceivable. People could argue, I'm not saying this is my position, but I'm saying it's an arguable one, that they can take ShotSpotter data, and every time that the ShotSpotter company calls it into the police and they go to investigate and find out that it's not a violent crime, that somebody in their backyard, imagine a rural scenario, shooting firearms, that did get put on the list or something of that nature. But if I was in a position of power and this issue came before me, my exact response to that concern would be dissuaded by the number of positive interactions I've had with officers who also share the same kind of privacy concerns, as well as the way ShotSpotter handles their data and the way and the nature of exactly how they relay these incidents, they call them, to the police departments. I don't think that that privacy concern overrides the need for a system such as this. Now, when it comes to where tax dollars should go, that's a crucial question, because it depends on the needs of the community. I believe. Um, if the social programs are underfunded, and it can be argued that they need that money more, especially if tax money comes from something like business taxes in our area, then we can have a detailed discussion about it. But if it's something like subsidized funding coming in, we should use it for what it's supposed to be used for. We were in the midst of a serious health emergency, and I'd like to know exactly how much of that money went to law enforcement in that area, and how exactly that can be justified as part of a health emergency spending package.
Mhm.
But so far as priorities, that comes down to a local uh to a local concern standpoint. It depends on the priorities of what's needed in the community. If our little league programs are well funded and they're doing well, and kids are getting a positive impact from it, then everything's good. And we should put it in the shot spotter because it's necessary, because gun violence is high. But at the same time, if crime's not exploding and the baseball field needs to be redone, obviously the baseball field should be redone. The problem is when they're both doing the same.
Mhm.
And that's where you really just have to dig in with residents and families and find out exactly what their priorities are.
Good point. Well, here's another priority topic, if you will, redistricting in the state of Virginia. And Virginia Beach is going to get this three ways very soon because we'll have a municipal level change on our districts. We're going to have state level on our districts. We're going to have federal level, all depending on census information and the new state laws. So this is kind of a broad topic, but what makes a proper district in terms of representation? What is fair in your mind about how to make districts? And let's start with Mr. Charles.
Well, first, I want to extend thanks to Miss Stephanie Doyle if she's watching. She went to the redistricting board meeting this past Tuesday at ODU, and she spoke in my stead because I had to work. We're getting ready to go into a big bridge job. When it comes to redistricting, I think that districts need to be drawn based on the communities, because there's a lot of places now, including my own district, where more than one geographical area, each of which containing more than one different group of people with a different culture and different understandings. You get these huge disjointed districts that do the services of none of these communities that they cover. They don't do anything for them. They're drawn for political reasons. They're drawn to group in certain types of people that vote certain types of way, so that the people that are already in power, that have been drawing the maps till this point, can stay that way. That's why I'm really kind of hopeful about this next redistricting, just a few years after our last one, because they're actively seeking citizen input. And I hope that enough people speak up for the idea that our districts should be drawn according to the way our communities are broken into, with their distinct cultures and peoples, not for political expediency, because that's the best way to afford these communities the representation they deserve.
Miss Nikia, how would you approach the idea as a growing activist in the community, the concept of redistricting?
This is my issue with the current state, with the I guess the citizens panel that was voted in the last session. My problem with it is that whereas it is citizen based, and it does have the input of the community. The question is, which community? And is there is there the ability to make sure that the dynamics of that panel, of that review board, have both gender and racial equity. Because, when you have people being appointed, or, people being part of a board, the individuals that you're going to get the most of that are going to either volunteer or, state that they want to be a part of that, are going to be, number one, older, and number two, Anglo-Saxon. So understanding that there has to be a balance, and there has to be, a DEI component, and DEI, for those people who don't know, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Involved in, whatever board is brought to the table. I think that that's super important, because if that does not happen, then there's going to be a whole section of citizens that are going to be left behind. When you, especially when you leave the fate of the individuals who are on these different redistricting boards and things of that nature, if your political party is in power, great. Of course, you're going to be happy with the results, because the person that makes the decisions in regards to who, what, where is on that board are going to be individuals that share, are going to be like-minded with you, are going to look for the exact same things that you are looking for. But if the individual that's making those decisions are in an opposite political party or political mindset than you are, then the results are going to be, not to your liking, and they're going to misrepresent what the illusion of what's thought of as what the public needs. So I think that, whereas citizen input is very important, I also think that it should be crystal clear that there is adequate representation across the board, for these boards and committees, especially when dealing with redrawing districts and, setting up, areas for elections.
Yeah. That's a whole nother component. I hate to admit it, and I do intend to correct this, but I haven't been following all the redistricting board meetings as closely as I probably should have. But
Me
from the
too.
one that I watched on Tuesday when I was at work, the board itself seems pretty diverse in terms of color-wise and man-woman-wise. But you hit the nail on the head with a lot of them, especially since it was volunteer-based. A lot of them were kind of older. And, I think that you're exactly right, that boards, especially those made up of citizens, they need to ensure that these boards that they constitute are diverse in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of socioeconomic status. Because I'm not saying there shouldn't be any doctors on the board, but it shouldn't only be doctors on the board.
Absolutely.
Just like when it comes to citizen review oversight panels and policemen. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any cops on the board, but there should only cops on the board, quite obviously. And that's why it's crucial, absolutely crucial, that people continue to watch when this board comes, because they're going to different areas in the state. They need to go, make their voices heard, make sure that people continue to urge this board to work transparently, to hire actual map makers who know what they're doing, and not to consult politicians over what they desire, not to consider incumbents' addresses in these districts, and to make sure that they hear from the needs of multiple segments of each community that will be affected, and that they work with the people in mind, not with political expediency.
And it's like you said, making sure that there is, diverse representation across the board. And I agree with you with citizen review panels. You don't want to have a board that's loaded with retired cops. But then you also don't want a board that's, that's dominated with, and this is an extreme because I know this wouldn't happen, but you don't want a board that's full of felons.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to understand when appointing people to these boards and making those decisions and, bringing those individuals to the table, that there be a diverse component. Just like I don't think that it serves cities to just have school boards that are full of NDs. I think that, in order for each segment of the population to be served, yes, you need those individuals that are, educated, who have the theory and the practice, of education under them. But you know what? Every now and then you need a parent. And, that parent might be, a college graduate. They may have some college or they may have no college at all. But if they prove that they advocate for our children and that and their willingness to do the right thing by our kids is at the forefront of their minds, and they're able to show that, then I don't think that, anyone should feel inhibited by voting for that individual, over someone who has a lot of paper but no substance. So, there's just, in every situation, you have to proceed with forethought. Where something might be this incredible idea, in your head and thought, in executing that idea, the ability to step back and just say, okay, what about this? What about this? How do we make sure that this doesn't happen? How do we make sure that everybody's voice is represented in some way? Do we do focus groups? Do we, do we reach out to other citizens who might not be formal members of the board, but they're willing to speak on areas that, might be lacking a voice? There's just making sure that, that forethought is there and that it exists, I think is crucial, especially when you have any type of committee or board that is composed of the general public.
Good points. Now, we're going to switch, I guess, topics completely in a way from representation and districting over to how government is funded, just because it's a very easy topic to have a general opinion about. So, Charles, you're a libertarian, so this should be an easy guess that what my thoughts should be on Virginia's tax structure. Now, I'm more to your left, and so is Nikia. So let's just have a chat about how taxation should and shouldn't go in Virginia broadly.
Honestly, you get one of those scales where it's how extreme are you on this scale. And I recognize that in this mission to defend our citizens' liberties, the government can't do it with donations. There need to be taxes from somewhere. That being said, while I can understand a rational explanation for taxes like those on capital gains, or taxes on things like sales, or even taxes on certain things like cigarettes or gas if you want to discourage their use. But there is absolutely no reason why every time you get paid, the government should reach their hand out to you first. There is no reason why, if you buy a house or you buy a piece of land or you buy something else and you're not paying sales tax on interest or something of that nature, that you should pay for the privilege of just owning something free and clear when you've already bought it. There's a lot of different ways we can cut waste, still collect money from those who benefit the most from economic growth, and those who are in a standpoint to help other people achieve economic growth, both through wage work, and contracted work. There's a way to do these things without sticking your hand in the pocket of average people that already have a hard enough time getting by. And one more thing about education, since we're on the topic of education before, we're getting the funding now. I like Miss Nikia's idea about diversifying who exactly sits on school boards, because when you have a school board full of administrators, it tends to skew how they direct money that they get from the state and from the city. And there's a lot of top heavy waste when it comes to the schools. And that's just one more way that if we give people more options, give people more choice, and diversify those that are, making the decisions, then we can see how the government can be made to work for us and not as something we have to serve. So to wrap all that up, I believe that taxation shouldn't be the government shoving their hands in people's pockets. The government should be taking a small cut of economic work done in their area, not retrieving money from everybody before they're allowed to get paid. And I think there's a lot of top heavy waste in education. And if we fix both of those problems, they compound on each other. The more you reduce waste in the government, the less you have to tax people to fund the government. The less you just recklessly just spend money and print money, the more that you don't have to take money from people. You understand? Like when I was a little bit younger, there was a big thing about taxing the rich people, tax the billionaires, tax the rich people. But the thing is, you could take all of Jeff Bezos' money, take all of it, and fund the government for maybe a couple of months if you're lucky, and you cut spending. So it's that you can't tax your way out of bad economic policy. So all these things, just like gun violence in the Second Amendment, all these things run on to each other. And it requires our community, not those who have a vested interest in how the government can benefit them. It takes the community using the government to benefit it. You see the crucial difference there between the people who have the capacity to make government work for them and our ability to make government work for us. All that to say, taxes are too high.
All right. Mr. Kia, how would you just sort of look at the concept of taxation all the way from the Bezoses of the world, which doesn't live in Virginia, so we wouldn't have an ability to tax them anyway, to even us as income earners direct, as people who drive living on payrolls and stuff like that. So then you also get the fact that I'm about to have my August stickers on my car have to be renewed. And that's like hundreds of dollars if I wanted to buy a couple 2 years out and something like that. So there's always a way that the government finds a way to get our money, even if we don't make that much money. So what would be your generalized thoughts, I guess, on this matter?
Well, as a, being from the Commonwealth, I have always said that the Commonwealth is made for students and retirees, and everybody else gets screwed. Just, I think that where people have, this is just my thought process. I would much rather, the Commonwealth have an income-based taxation system than the sales and excise tax system that seems to be becoming more prevalent right now. Because if, let's say, individuals who are in a higher tax bracket are receiving, additional taxation, which I do agree with. to a point, because those individuals are, they're making their fortunes or their wealth on, the backs of individuals who aren't, in their income brackets and things of that nature. So, if paying extra in taxation assists with social programs for those individuals who don't make, money even close to where they are, then I don't see a problem with that. What I do have a problem with, however, is when you have sales and excise taxes that are, basically sitting on the backs of the middle class and the and low income families, and this is everybody's favorite subject to hate. Perfect example: tolls. And that, tolls in themselves, since the intention is to, once they expand the HRBT, is to toll the HRBT. What's that going to do? It's going to bottleneck individuals in areas to where they're not going to be able to afford to go to different regions, different areas of the 757 to work. And, a lot of people from the peninsula commute to the South Side because money's better on the South Side. I did it. Thank you, God, I don't have to do it now. My husband does it. He works in Portsmouth. But, the way that he's able to get to work from Hampton is to take them on a Merrimack. That is not told. But that's not something that hasn't been a part of the conversation. There's been conversation about tolling the HRBT. There's been conversation about tolling them on a Merrimack. And what's going to happen to those individuals that live in Suffolk, who might commute to Norfolk for work, or those individuals that live, in the Chesapeake Square area of Portsmouth, or, where they're already having to deal with the Midtown and the downtown tunnel being tolled. Then if the HRBT is told, then you pretty much either, you're going to raise the, the expenditures of middle class people who are traveling to the South Side to make better money. And that, that's going to create, an undue burden that, is definitely more heavily absorbed by middle and lower class families. And to me, that's wrong. So, whereas, taxes suck across the board.
Yeah.
But, am I going to feel bad that, Joe Millionaire that, lives out in Ocean Lakes and, or, I'm not gonna really feel bad if they have to pay, a couple hundred or or even a couple thousand more in general income tax, versus us having this obscene toll system that, whereas that individual who makes 6 or 7 figures a year, that's, their Starbucks allowance. But for somebody that makes $20,000 or $30,000 a year, having to commute 2 ways, just to be able to put food on the table, that's going to break their backs. And, I can't support that.
So the ultimate crux comes down to the debate between aggressive taxation and progressive taxation, and where the balance is, and where both the best way to generate revenue and not make people more impoverished in the process. So that's where the debate comes in. So I'm curious. We're getting right about this second. We're at an hour and 10 minutes into our show. So do you want to have one more question about the concept that, well, just talking about the statewide candidates, or would you like to call it a night? Because I'm leaning
I'll
towards.
go.
I'm interested in this, the statewide races. And Charles, I'm not sure if it's a problem to sway here because the Libertarians are not running a statewide candidate. They were sort of prohibited due to a lot of COVID factors. But we have the big names already on the ticket, like Republican Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe on the Democrat side. And there is the Liberation Party candidate, Princess Blanding. Now, she was a topic last week on the first Free Friday show because we had 3 libertarian ladies on, but we had Princess come up a couple times. So it's interesting to note that she is also on the ballot. So in this constant push for vote Dems because Republicans exist and vote Republicans because Dems exist, is Princess's place actually on the ballot a refreshing thing? And let's start with Ms. Nikia this time.
You know, it's interesting because when you have somebody who is a third party candidate, the real question is not, whether they're going to win or not, but which side of the fence are they going to take votes from? As much as our two-party system is not ideal, because it's not. There are so many different spheres of thought that, absolutely deserve a voice. And, they may be, on the far side of progressive, or they may be on the far side of the, the conservative side. They could be somewhere in the middle, or a spectrum of both, actually. But at the end of the day, the individuals, especially for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, it's going to be either the Republican or the Democratic nominee. I will admit, I did not vote for Hala Ayala. I had a different choice for the lieutenant governor candidate. And there's some things that I absolutely think that need to be corrected in regards to her campaign and being able to articulate her voice in a way that is comprehensive and well understood. I've known Terry McAuliffe for a while. I actually did restoration of rights during the Hillary Clinton campaign, and got a chance to really get to know Terry McAuliffe. I think that what he tried to do when he was governor the first time, I think, was a very noble effort. And whereas I want to see what his intent is in order to push some of those initiatives forward without, alienating half the state. I do not like Winsome Sims at all. I'm not a fan. And Glenn Youngkin, I want to know what he brings to the table other than money. Like, I still don't see anything, especially that speaks to me as a woman of color. So it's gonna be interesting to see how things play out. with the trend of the Commonwealth, I think the vote's on my side, but you never know. You know, it could go a lot of different ways. Virginia has done, you know, some crazier things in you know, in the past. So we'll see. At the end of the day, though, however, I just really want to have an executive leadership team that thinks about the Commonwealth as a whole, not just the individuals who have crazy money in Fairfax, not, you know, people who live in, you know, who have these oceanfront homes in Virginia Beach, not, but then, you know, I think that it's important that there be a balanced approach, and that especially those in executive leadership be willing to listen to those who might not have the experience that they do and the influence that they have or the network that they have. You know, and I'll say this and I'm gonna leave it alone. When the primaries were happening and, you know, the gubernatorial debates were happening, I might be a little different than most. I watched all of them. And with the first one, it just, you know, when you have people on stage who are trying to, you know, vie for your vote, and, you know, some of them introducing themselves to you for the very first time, you know, you have to be careful about what you say and how you say it. And I just remember watching everyone on the stage, the two Jennifers and Terry and God, I forgot the other guy's name, and Justin Fairfax. I just remember watching it. You know, things were pretty civil and, you know, very respectful until Justin Fairfax decided that he was going to compare his sexual assault allegation to the death of George Floyd. And I literally sat on my couch and I was just like, and I was like, well, that's a wrap. But I don't think that he realized the damage that he did with that one statement. And the thing is that especially when you have individuals who are going to be vying for the popular vote from two different, you know, from various political parties, you know, I think that people are going to have to be careful. And, you know, if my nervousness for Youngkin, well, let me not say my nervousness. My eyes will be open to see, you know, how far down the rabbit hole he's going to be willing to go in the debates that he will have with the candidates of record. So
Noted. Now, Mr. Charles, let's close out with your stance on the whole candidate tree on the statewide and what you probably would have wanted the Libertarians to have, your thoughts on the Liberation Party, and the big name tickets, Republican and Democrats.
All right. First off, Miss Nikia, my sympathies out to your old man because I make that commute every day as well. In the HRBT, I work for the company that is doing that project.
Oh, okay.
And I know that at least one set of tunnels is supposed to be tolled, and it aggravates me because it feels like paying for a premium subscription across the water.
Absolutely.
I really hope they don't toll both ends and make it more difficult for people to get across, because I'm telling you this, I will ride an hour and a half out of my way to avoid cutting through the tunnels.
My husband said the exact same thing. He was just like, if he has to drive through Smithfield in order to avoid the tunnel at the bottom of Merrimack, if they decide to toll it, he'll do it. And,
Yep.
you know, I was just like, well.
Yep. And so far as it comes to independents and statewide races, I'm happy to see an independent running for governor this year and Miss Blanding. We've spoken once. I've never had a bad word with the lady, but I also don't know her. But I do know, from what I've seen, she seems to be kind of a single issue candidate. But I need to do more research before I can really pledge my support one way or another. That being said, as usual, I'm really disappointed in the choices we've got. On one hand, we've got a Democratic candidate that wasn't really all that spectacular last time. And then we've got another business guy with no public policy experience who thinks he knows the best way to tell other people how to live their lives, because they can debate back and forth about what they're about, but at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. They think they know how people should best live, and so they're gonna make people do that. And that's not the answer. That's not what government's for. You get right back to the inefficiency and the waste of money. It's because they're after the wrong thing. They're not worried about protecting people's rights and liberties. They're worried about making people live in a way that they feel is appropriate. And that changes back and forth like the winds every 10 years. And that's a major reason why, as a country, we've been in a precarious position for decades. And that same political fighting and that same waste and that same corruption is more and more a problem right here at home. I am really, really sad that the Libertarians weren't able to field any candidates in the statewide race. And it's, a failing on the part of the Board of Elections and the powers that be in the Commonwealth's government, because where they went and made it easier for the others and bent the rules for those who had the power to get them to, they didn't do the same thing for everyone. And I'm sure the people from the Liberation Party probably attest to that fact. That being said, I'd like to learn more about the Liberation Party and what they're all about before I can make any type of statement on what I think of them, because I don't know who they are. The first time I saw an ad for Miss Blanding, I misread her ad. I thought it said Libertarian candidate for governor, and so I sent her a, "Hey, this is my first time. Can you help me?" message. And that's when she said, "Hey, it's nice to meet you, but please do relook at my ad." And that's when I went back and looked and was like, "Oh." And ever since, I've been naive but questioning. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's good to see an independent out there representing somebody's actual interests that doesn't have a stockholder attached to them. And I hope that's a trend that continues here in Virginia. And I'm actively fighting against the idea that a vote for a third party is a wasted vote. Because if we all would have got together and wasted our votes, we'd have a tax-cutting, fiscally responsible, socially liberal lady for president right now.
Joe Jorgensen.
I was scared. And so we got picked into an either-or position between either a business guy with no experience who thinks he knows how to make people run their lives, or Chester the molester. And it's terrible that we continuously get these bad candidates, where I'm sure I'm not alone in being super dissatisfied, because I didn't always consider myself a libertarian. Really, I mean, I've always thought the idea was pretty cool, but I've only recently been involved in the movement. I'm just tired of a race to the bottom with the big parties. I mean, you see it at the federal level, and it's happened again here in Virginia, here in the governor's election and the attorney general's election. You get this race to the bottom, where in order to win their primary system and win their nomination, you have a race to see who can be more and more extreme. You got to be more Republican than the other guy. You got to be more leftist Democrat than the next guy. Otherwise, you don't get the nomination of the party. And so then we end up with two extremes and nobody representing what people are actually concerned about. And that's why we as a nation have been staggering back and forth like a drunken man in a hallway for the past 40 years.
All right.
I will add this. I think one of the problems in the Commonwealth is the fact that we have executive leadership that, well, at least in the governor's mansion, that are one and done. Because you've got a candidate who, puts their all towards their campaign and getting into the governor's seat, but then they really don't have to do anything beyond their agenda because they, it's not like they're running for re-election. So, we don't have the ability to have the checks and balances in place to hold people to task and to just say, look, if you want time to do the, the extra work and to go beyond, a one term, then, you got to show me something. But nobody has to do that. And I think that that's a problem. I'm going to be real honest. Charles, don't like me on Facebook because my Facebook picture is going to mess with you.
Now I'm curious more than anything else. Yeah, it's if they produce more effective candidates, we would definitely. If the voters didn't get left every time they elect a governor, they didn't get left with a bad taste in their mouth, we'd have more governors that serve more than one term. It's right back to the idea of ineffective government and how you get somebody who says, all right, we're going to get Virginia together and we're going to work for everybody. And then they don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they don't. And then we get rid of them and then get another guy nobody likes to come in the seat and do the same exact thing. And we never get effective leadership. Then we never get effective government.
Well,
it's something that we can only we can make it happen because we all have to get together.
And I mean, the thing, with the one-term governor, that's written in the Virginia Constitution. So that would have to be basically voted out in order for a governor to have a consecutive term. But have we had a governor that we're just like, oh my God, he was so great that
one. Just one, I think, right?
Yeah. Have we had any
in our lives?
All just sit there and be like, oh, they were just absolutely phenomenal, and let's do what we can in order to change the Virginia Constitution so they can run again. And the closest is, Terry McAuliffe has found the loophole to where he's not running 2 consecutive terms, but he's, it's him, a Gap who was a Democrat, and then he wants to run again. And so that's probably going to be the most consistent if he is successful in his bid. But, being a, that portion of the Virginia Constitution is an issue. And, I challenge individuals who run for executive office to perform in a way where you are that candidate that makes us change the Virginia Constitution, and nobody in the history of the Commonwealth has been able to do that. So hopefully somebody will take the challenge.
Hopefully, but it should definitely be noted it does not take a constitutional amendment to produce quality candidates.
I agree.
Yep. If it doesn't matter if it's the same guy if we can rely on candidates that are of quality and interested in the people's interests first, and not party objectives and not interest groups objectives, and they don't do things that are unpopular that have to be undid every 4 years. If we constantly have a stream of good candidates and they prove themselves to be interested in the people first and the people's freedoms first, then they'll naturally come back to the forefold because they'll continue their activism and they won't just fade into the background like some of our recent governors have, or one of our recent governors that I can think of. And to answer you guys' question, I'm pretty sure there is one guy who did what we're talking about here. And he was in our lifetimes. Well, not my lifetime, but it was decades ago. And this guy was such a quality candidate that he switched parties and still won again in
Smart.
different years. But that's the only one. And so, yeah, that's a huge problem. If we can halt that race to the bottom and put the people's interests first and get people that folks are proud to vote for and groups that they're proud to be affiliated with, not groups that they feel like they have to compromise to be a part of, then we don't have to have a constitutional amendment to have effective government. But that's one more of them things where honestly, I'm not an expert on it, and I'd love to learn more about it.
Cool. Well, Mr. Charles, what are your final thoughts on tonight's little discussion here on Free Friday number 2?
Free Friday. Glad we're free. Glad it's Friday. I'm really happy that I got to meet Miss Nikia Miller, and I hope that we can get in contact sometime in the not too distant future and see if there's ways we can work together and see where our visions intersect. Conrad, as always, it's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for bringing me back out. To all of you guys watching at home and around the world, as some would say, thank you all so much for coming and listening to us talk about education and talk about violence in our community and how we can counter it together. And look out for the West campaign because we're on a steamroll. We're knocking on people's doors in neighborhoods all the time. And you can find more information from us on the Facebook or on the Twitter at West for Delegate 21. Like I said, thanks, guys.
Thank you. And we'll catch you next time, Mr. West. Ms. Nikia, your final thoughts.
This has been so much fun. I always love talking politics with, individuals who, we might not be 100% congruent, but we respect each other enough to be able to have a conversation that's fruitful and that, moves the needle forward for all of us. Charles, it's been a pleasure. I am going to send you a Facebook request. Do not cringe at my pictures.
I'm probably gonna laugh. I swear, I don't take things like that too seriously.
For everyone out there, if you're interested in following more up on, what is, my major focus right now, you are more than welcome to look up our Facebook group. It is Justice for Celeste on Facebook. And that's at www.facebook.com/groups/8 and then 4FOR and Celeste, CELESTE. And that is where you'll find all of the information in regards to what happened to my daughter and what we're going to do about it. So please feel free to join the Facebook group. And if you have any questions, please hit me up. I always respond to my messages. And I'll catch everybody on the flip side.
Sounds great. Well, Nikia, Charles, it's been great. I'll catch you guys next time. Definitely want to have you guys on in the future. Well, this has been another great Beach Brothers show. I, Conrad Chesviner. You can look at my Facebook, Charles Conrad Chesviner for Virginia Beach. Also look for just Conrad Chesviner on Facebook. Send me a friend request if you'd like to. I also would like you to like the Beach Brothers Show on Facebook. Go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel for the Beach Brothers Show, because we are definitely looking to grow, to bring on many great people here on this show, both for business and politics. Also look at the next coming image on this show, the Hampton Roads Black Caucus. I very much would like you to look into the organization, because it serves both Chesapeake and Hampton and Newport News and Norfolk and Portsmouth and Suffolk and Virginia Beach. We're moving to improve our communities around the 757. So make sure you look up the Hampton Roads Black Caucus, learn about it, perhaps even join it. And I would also like you guys to pay attention to the next few videos, because they're what the Great Beach Brothers Show is about, individual for individual. So I thank you for stopping by tonight on the Beach Brothers Show. And let's learn a bit more about Beach Brother Jose Cruz.
It's never too early or too late to plan for retirement. Let me show you how to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your assets from loss due to catastrophic decisions that may affect you the rest of your life. Please call me.
Now for Mr. Seiko Varner and Positive Vibes.
This show was brought to you by Positive Vibes Incorporated, our consulting services. We do credit fixes, we do tax resolution, we lend private money, and debt consolidation. So if you need some of these services, we're waiting here for you. Credit fixes, tax resolutions, private money, and debt consolidation. Make sure you call Positive Vibes Incorporated.